Hey y'all, it's Mary Hyatt, and I'm so excited that you're here for this month's topic, which is all about fear. Whether it's the coronavirus or a tornado in Nashville, or maybe just the fear of your health, the fear of ending up alone, or the fear of not making enough money. You get the idea. We've got a lot of fear circling around. So this month, we're going to be talking about how to manage that fear and come back to a place of equilibrium and balance. So let's jump straight into it.
Welcome to the Living Fully Alive podcast with Mary Hyatt, here to help you find your authentic voice, learn how to love yourself, and embrace your life. And now, your host, life and mindset coach, body love advocate, and doTERRA Presidential Diamond, Mary Hyatt.
Hey y'all, real quick before we hop into today's episode, I am so excited to share a brand new resource with you. I have created a fear support kit just for you. It's totally free, and this kit includes a bonus audio guided meditation specifically created to help ground you and feel safe in your body. It also includes a PDF worksheet to help you rewrite your relationship to your fear, my favorite DIY essential oil recipes for combating fear, plus my number one mantra that I personally use for clearing out fearful energy. So follow the link below or head on over to maryhyatt.com/fear kit. That's FEARKIT to snag your fear support kit as my personal gift to you. Now, here is this week's episode. Hey y'all, it is Mary, and I am excited that we are back together for a new month. This is kind of a continuation from our topic last month, which was all about emotional intelligence, but I thought that we would sort of get into some more, let's just say deeper type of emotions that contribute to crisis, to trauma, to grief. There is just so much going on globally right now, and even locally here where I live in Nashville, that I actually had a totally different topic planned for this month. And I didn't even do an episode last week because I just felt like what I was going to talk about was, I don't want to say superficial, but it was like, it doesn't even matter. Like when people are in crisis, there are things that I feel like just aren't as necessary to have a discussion around. And I feel like with the climate of where our world is, and especially experiencing the Nashville tornado that came through our city last week, there's just a lot of energy in the air right now. I don't know if you guys can feel it. I don't know if you are aware of it with coronavirus, and there's a general heaviness. There is a lot of fear. There's a lot of panic getting stirred up. And I know that for me personally, it has just been a really challenging last little over a week now. The tornado hit about 3 blocks from my house, and it was a very scary night. And we've had in our family, we had a death of a dear family friend. And dealing with that, one of my dear friends is going through a divorce. We've got coronavirus going on. And I just thought, you know what? I just need to talk about fear. I just need to get into some of these things that are showing up for a lot of people collectively and globally, and speak to it. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about fear. Because all you have to do is open your phone and your cortisol levels are likely going to immediately get activated. I know that for me, I'm sort of in the aftermath of the tornado. It's like, the night that it happened, I was woken up by my phone alerting me to take cover, and that there was already a touchdown. And I went out into my living room and I looked out my window and I can see into downtown Nashville, and there was just this weird like purple green light that was flashing from the storm. And I was like, oh, this is not going to be good. And my lights were flickering and my power goes out, and at that point I had turned on the news for about a minute before my power went out, and it said, named a street that's super close to me. And I was like, oh my God, this is right near me. And so I called my family, I called my dad and got him on the phone, and he walked me through, from the television what was going on. And I went into my safe space, into my bathroom. And to be honest, y'all, like I was having a panic attack. I mean, it was absolutely terrifying. And I thank God my house is okay. I'm okay. People that I know and love that live in this community are okay. But the devastation that has occurred in Nashville it's unreal. I mean, I went down the morning after, not having slept, and I go down and I just see the places where I've eaten, the places that I go to, the places that I frequent on a daily basis. That is my home, my community is just rubble. And I walked around for about 3 hours and just kind of like a disassociative state of going like, what am I even looking at? It's like, seeing war on the TV versus seeing war in real life. It was kind of like, that's what it felt like. And I came home hardly even able to process, and I just threw up. Like I got home, and after I got out of the chaos, I just threw up, and I was laid out for a couple of days, just emotionally like processing what was going on. And, it triggered a whole cascade of other emotions for me. And I spent several days in that place, and, the energy, you can just feel it, and we're talking about fear. And I know that for me, that fear was real. Like my life is in danger. My actual life is in threat, and I need to be in this bathroom. I need to be in shelter. I need to be protecting myself. But that is just, my story. I mean, there's so many other people that are experiencing this real deep primal fear and panic for coronavirus. And, this fear, this panic is contagious. I've been watching it sort of unfold. I'm sure you guys have too online. And it's just like, feels like every day the fear and the panic is just increasing and increasing and increasing. And whether it is a tornado or whether it is coronavirus, I mean, the reality is we experience fear all the time without that added ampage of what is happening kind of, right now in today's time. Like even if you listen to this episode a year from now or several years from 2020, I mean, there will be something that is causing fear. We experience so much fear, whether it's globally or even just personally. I mean, the fear of death, the fear of divorce, the fear of losing our jobs, the fear of losing money, the fear of our children's well-being, the fear of aging, fear of being alone, fear of our bodies falling apart, getting sick, fear of getting cancer, fear of abuse. I mean, the list can go on and on and on. And it really can wreak havoc on our lives and deplete our energy. So I want to talk about fear today because there is an experience of it. And I think that we talk about fear, but I kind of want to slow it down so we can name some things about it. And later on in the episode, I'm going to give you my tools of how to sort of snap out of this spiral of the fear. Okay. And it's really, I think, valuable. So hang with me until then, but I want to kind of just discuss fear in general before we get to that place. So let's remember that fear, just like every other emotion in our body, is a vibration in the body. It's a chemistry that's being created inside of our bodies. And when fear chemically gets triggered, our physical body is going to have a physiological response. We talked a lot about the anatomy of emotions in a couple past episodes. So go back and listen to that. But there really is this mind-body connection that is happening. And so when fear gets chemically triggered in our body, we have a physiological response, right? So typically, if you think about fear, what happens in the body? Like our cortisol levels go up, our adrenals get taxed, it increases our blood flow to our extremities, just in case you have to run for your life. Our muscles get tense and tight, our heart starts beating faster, we might begin to sweat, our eyesight becomes more keen. Maybe we drop our head forward and we round our back to protect our vital organs like our heart. And so fear, there is a physiological reaction that is happening inside of the body when this chemistry gets triggered. And fear, again, it's not only a response to something that's present, that's happening. Like let's say me in my bathroom taking cover from this tornado, right? That's real, like in present time, an actual threat that's going to trigger fear. But fear is also triggered from all of our collective fear memories in our body, from past traumas and fearful events. So it's not only that the present fear is getting activated and triggered, but it's actually activating all of those collective memories of fear in the chemistry of our brain and our body. And so it's an intense feeling. It's an intense chemical reaction and causes us to immediately respond. And if you think about fear, fear has a job, just like grief has a job, just like anger has a job. I mean, a lot of these emotions are, they have a light side and they have a dark side, right? They have a shadow side and they have a productive side, a constructive and a deconstructive side. So no emotion is all bad or all good. There are great things about each emotions, and there are potentially some negative things about each emotion. Maybe not so much negative in the sense of like, I don't really think that there's a shadow side to joy or gratitude. I think those are all pretty much amazing and great. But when we're talking about some of these heavier, more dense, historically referenced and referred to as negative emotions, they do have something that is beneficial for us. They can teach us things. I think of, anger is such a powerful teacher. It helps us bring boundaries to situations. It helps us realize when there is abuse present. Fear also is a very positive thing in that it is created to keep us safe. So its job is to keep us out of danger. And when fear is present, it activates that reptilian brain, our survival brain, and we go into protecting ourselves. This is why when we see kind of the negative side of things, when we see this reptilian brain get activated globally or collectively, as like what we're seeing with the coronavirus right now, that's when you start to see like mass hysteria happening, people pushing people over, running into the grocery store to stock up, because our brains are signaling to ourselves to stay safe, to stay alive. Fear is the anticipation of future pain. And as humans, we don't want to experience pain. We want to avoid pain at all costs. So I don't want to minimize fear because it's real. I mean, it really is a chemical response that happens. And it is, I think, really important to understand the difference between healthy fear and debilitating fear. Like, healthy fear is where you go, hey, there is a threat present, something like a virus, something like a tornado, and you take necessary precautions to protect yourself. You get in your safe space, you take your supplements, you use your essential oils, you make sure that you are following proper hygiene. You're doing things that are healthy responses that are what I would call like a debilitating response to fear. And this is when our fears biologically shift into this part of the brain that is our fear center. And this is where we don't have any executive functioning. Like, that part of our frontal cortex in our brain isn't lit up. So we are stuck in this fight, flight, freeze, disassociating state where our bodies are unable to rest or restore, repair, or heal. And this is where we get stuck in that place. And so let's take a little bit of a closer look at experiencing fear, right? So in the body as a sensation, how that's probably going to show up for you. And you can just sort of take inventory for yourself and see, okay, what would this look like for me when I experience fear? How do I sensationally feel it as a sensation in my body? Is it jittery nerves? Is it nausea, tightness in my throat? Is it soreness or pressure in my heart? Is it being lightheaded or exhausted? Maybe it's my shoulders tightening up. Maybe it is my body hunching over. What does it look like for you from a sensory perspective to experience fear? And then you can kind of see this through behavior. And again, sort of as we're talking about this, just kind of think about your typical response. So it might look like consistent rumination over worst case scenarios. It could be scrolling through social media and news articles like obsessively, I have been caught doing that over the past couple of days. And I'm like, ooh, this is really not enjoyable at the end of the day. It's like, just feeds it. It could be being caught in reactivity. So there's no planning, there's no pausing, there's no presence. It could look like being hypervigilant. So having response to noise, to like audio stimulation, to like I'm just trying to think like sensory overload, basically, like hypervigilation, like an ambulance comes by and you go, what's happening? Or you hear a noise outside and you're just like on alert, right? It could be thinking shameful thoughts, thinking self-harming thoughts, thinking self-protecting thoughts. So when fear gets activated, we kind of go into this response. And what's so interesting about the fear response is that when this happens, our brain is getting a really strong dopamine hit every time we look at that image, read an article, talk about it with our friends and strangers. It's actually reinforcing that into our nervous system. So the actual effect of fear might only last for like a few seconds, but as we continue to look at social media, watch the news, hyper-focus on the thing that is causing the fear, replaying the memory of other fears, playing out worst case scenarios, we get caught in a fear loop, which can last much, much longer. It's like the fear is working overtime and it has its foot stuck on the gas pedal, even though we are actually safe. It's like the cause of the initiating fear is over, and yet our body is still rigid. It keeps our mind in obsession. Our shoulders become permanently tight. Our digestion slows. We have digestive issues. We have a hard time opening up and receiving love. Like nothing feels safe. And we make temporary decisions. We sort of play out this kind of frantic energy, or sometimes it can cause a low energy cycle. And it just permeates our lives, leaving us feeling fatigued, simultaneously kind of reaching for the coffee in the morning and then moving on to wine in the afternoon and the evening just to sort of get through the day. So that's sort of what fear can do, what it looks like, what it feels like within the body. And I want to share this little story with you because it's come up for me. But years ago, my dad wrote a book, a New York Times bestselling book. He's since moved on to completely different topics and talks about leadership and productivity and is amazing. But when I was younger, this is when I was in high school, he wrote a book about Y2K. He was the guy, the expert explaining what would happen, sort of the end of the world situation when Y2K happened, the year 2000. And if you remember that, it was like all of the computers were not supposed to be able to process this new date of 2000, and it was going to cause economic collapse. It was going to cause just collapse, societal collapse in all the different ways. So we actually went out and moved out to a farm that was about an hour outside of Nashville. And we had a bunker, y'all. Like we had a bunker full of 2 to 3 years of dehydrated food, all of the toiletries you could imagine, water, guns, ammo. Like we were prepared for the end of the freaking world. And I share that with you because oh my God. I mean, this tornado that happened basically kicked up all of that old trauma from years past. And thankfully, we can talk about it openly as a family and we kind of joke about it. And, he was doing what he thought was best for our family, trying to protect his family. It made total sense with the information that he was going off of. And I think, God, this is like, the coronavirus thing is like 2.0. I'm like seeing this happen and flesh out and people running to the stores and everybody freaking out, kind of like it's going to be the end of the world. And man, as I think about it with fear, what happens is we start trying to find all these ways to confirm that bad things are going to happen. And I've been in this state and I was able to kind of, move myself out of it. But my body was so constricted. I've been exhausted. I've been emotional. I've been panicky. My dreams have been like nightmares. It's been in full swing for me. And as Tara Brach says, she says, rather than a temporary reaction to danger, we can develop a permanent suit of armor. And when we don't deal with our fear and when we don't recognize that we are in this fear loop or fear trance, it can really become a permanent suit of armor. And then it triggers a cascade of emotions. And this is really, really normal. So for a lot of people, this is when we go into hyper control mode or blame mode. You can see this happening. It's like we want to find somebody who is at fault, somebody to be angry with. We can see this on social media right now. But this is what's happening just in our everyday life. It's like we have an emotional response to the fear, and this fear activates a secondary emotion. And this is our historical way of processing and dealing with fear. So whether that is guilt, it's all my fault, I've caused this, we kind of get into that space. It could be anger, obsession, control, grief, anger, anxiety, depression, disassociation, victimhood, can trigger some attention-seeking behaviors to kind of disassociate even further and focusing in on ourselves. It can create addictive behavior to get out of that pain, to get out of that fear. And so our reaction to fear makes us go into these sort of well-worn, habitual, emotional go-to states. We react and we respond in our way that feels like we have some kind of control over the situation. But if we peel back the layers to these behaviors from our secondary emotions, we're going to find that fear is at the root. Fear really is what is causing us to act and behave and feel in certain ways. And y'all, this is really normal. I want to be really kind here and just say that you are not a bad person for feeling angry or guilty or feeling shame or feeling like you just can't even handle it and you go into denial. This is normal. This is a normal survival emotional response to a threat. I mean, we self-protect by feeling something else. This is, in a way, our trauma response. And it's not like we're consciously choosing this or we're thinking about it. It's just totally reactive. That is, again, ancient. It is something that we developed as our little selves way back when we were little, and we didn't know how to consciously process and move through emotions. And we, kind of created a secondary thing going on in order to handle the originating fear. And so let's be gentle with ourselves. I mean, we want to bring awareness to this in ourselves as adults, but not from a place of judgment or criticism. It's just simply to help us understand ourselves more so that then we can choose a more empowering and life-giving way to process through our fear. So I'm curious for you guys, what is your go-to reaction to fear? What is your secondary emotion to fear? What does it trigger for you? So if you think about, just use the coronavirus, for example, or if you're in Nashville, think about the tornado. What did that trigger in you? What's the secondary emotion that's coming up for you? What old traumas is this triggering for you? I know that for me, it has triggered major feelings of abandonment, the fear of being alone, wanting a sense of home and safety and security that I haven't felt since before my divorce, 5 years ago. It's oh my God. I just remember just going through this. I'm I feel so alone and just totally terrified that I'm going to be alone. So a lot of that is getting stirred up in me. But again, if I peel it back, it's fear, right? It's the fear that is the sort of originating emotion. And when we can put a name to what fear triggers in us, and how we personally get stuck in our own fear loop and our own trance of fear, then we can shift out of it. When we can see how this creates a cascading effect in our lives, affecting our health and our work and our relationships and our lives, then we have power to do something about it. So here are 2 facts about fear that I think we need to know before I share my tools with you to snap you out of this fear trance. Hey y'all, I just wanted to interrupt this episode real quick to remind you to subscribe to this podcast. I know that emails get lost in your spam folder, so subscribing means my episodes come right to your phone. So go ahead, hit that quick little subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any of the Living Fully Alive episodes. Plus, in addition to subscribing to the podcast, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. I don't know if you know this, but I have been releasing guided meditations every Monday over on YouTube, and you're not going to hear them here. So if you've been wanting to start an easy meditation practice, subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you don't miss out on my short 15-minute guided meditations. All right, now back to this week's episode. So the fact number 1 is that fear is paralyzing. Literally, fear's job is to say stop. Like, it knocks us out. It keeps us in our lives away from that pain. And it takes us away from life. It literally, when you think about when you're stuck in fear, how paralyzing it is, it literally does no good for the larger story of humanity. Like, it keeps us focused in on ourselves. It keeps us ruminating in this constant spiral and loop to where it just takes us out of the game. Like, we can't do anything. Fear is so paralyzing. And that can give us a lot of compassion for ourselves, and also realizing like it's just after the point where we're out of danger, and if we're still feeling it, it's not productive anymore. Number 2, it weakens our immune system. It physically taxes us. So when we are stuck in consistent fear is going to trigger our cortisol levels to spike. We talked about that for a second. And the adrenals get taxed. The adrenals are responsible for producing the hormone of cortisol. And when the adrenals get taxed, it's going to tax our thymus gland, which is responsible for telling our white blood cells, our fighter cells, to keep healthy and kill off viruses and bacteria. So it literally weakens our immune system. It's kind of a domino effect that happens on the body. And stress and fear tax our bodies. And if we think about how often we're in that state, again, not even like in the big, larger sense of fear, like with the tornado or the virus, but like normal fear. I'm going to lose everything I have. I'm going to go bankrupt. I'm not going to be able to pay my bills this week or this month. I am not sure what's going to happen to me through this divorce. I just lost a loved one. The fear of getting sick, the fear of being alone, all these different sort of normal fears that we all experience. When we're stuck in those fear loops, it's paralyzing and it weakens our immune system. So now, here's where we have to access our higher mind, y'all, and shift ourselves out of the spiral of fear. This is really important. And I know it's kind of honestly, it's challenging to do this. It's hard to do this because our minds want to be caught in the fear loop. This kind of sounds backwards, but it actually feels, quote unquote, feels good to our chemistry, even though it feels bad emotionally. It's like we're getting this dopamine hit. We're getting this high. Like, think about taking a drug. Even though it's negative, our brain is processing that as something that we like. You know, it's a rush in our bodies, and it becomes addictive. We get addicted to the fear. We get addicted to the drama. That's why all this stuff is spreading on social media like crazy, because we get addicted to it. And it's like it's truly a chemical addiction. And I'm just here to kind of like say halt because we cannot let our environment dictate our emotions. That is paralyzing. That is being a victim. And the most amazing thing about the human mind is that we can train it. We can direct it. We can shift the focus. We can access a higher mind that is higher than the chemistry in our bodies and shift our internal landscape. We can actually change our thoughts and reroute our brain's response and turn off our survival brain and come back to a place of balance and harmony. This is a conscious choice. And so this is where I'm just going to pause to invite you to come back and make the decision right now to pull yourself out of this trance and come back to life. This is where our power lies, so that we are not a victim to the hysteria that's going on in our world and our lives, and not a victim to what other people are doing, to other people's responses in our lives, to temporary situations. And so I want to share with you 5 tools to help you snap out of the trance of fear and anchor yourself back into emotional balance. We got to calm our nervous system, y'all. So the first tool I want to share with you is to control the narrative. Asking yourself, okay, I know it feels like this. I know there's a lot of stuff going on, but let me come back to what is real. Thinking about, where are you putting your focus? Where are you putting your energy? You know, you are not a victim to consumption. You can shift what you're looking at, what you're watching, who you're following. You are not a victim to unproductive thoughts. I mean, this is where you have got to take full responsibility and choose the story that you're going to live into. It's like, is life happening to you or for you? You get to decide how you interpret what is happening in your life, personally and globally. Do not buy into the fear. Change the story. Change the internal narrative. It's like, what would be a more empowering way to see what's happening in your life? If life really were for you, how could you see the evidence of that? If you could shift from fear to faith, what would that sound like? So my encouragement and really like stern wisdom is to stop adding to the hysteria. Stop collectively ruminating on the fear. Control your narrative. I am safe. I am okay. I am watched over. I am protected. I mean, y'all, I have been through a lot of trauma in my life, whether it's the death of a family member, whether it is divorce, whether it is physical trauma, whether it is a tornado. I have been through a lot. And I can tell you that our power lies in our response and our interpretation of what's happening. And the more that we can shift into controlling our narrative, it will snap us out of that fear. And we'll say, you know what? I know my brain wants to go to this. I know that I have some old memory that's getting stirred up. And I am going to see where I can find the light, even in the darkest of days. I am going to see where there is hope, even when my surroundings seem hopeless. Because otherwise, what do we have? You know what I mean? It's like, what do? We give up. We get depressed. We shut down. We're not in service to ourselves or to anyone else. And y'all, I've been there. I get it. But my invitation to you today is to control the narrative. Control the narrative. So the second tool, this is a real practical one, is somatic coping skills. When we are in fear, it's really important to get back into our physical bodies. That will help us snap out of the actual fear. Trauma, the way out of trauma is to get into our physical bodies. And so I'm going to share a couple embodiment practices of self-care that are going to help regulate you emotionally. And the goal here is to offer your body, your nervous system, a way to feel safe so that it can process emotions. And so this would include things like, I just recently did this. I bought a weighted blanket. I freaking love that thing. And I sleep with it. It's really heavy. It weighs 20 pounds. It's amazing. That is really safe feeling for my body. You can also kind of swaddle your body in a blanket or a sweater. My therapist a couple months ago, she was like, you just need to go get like a really comfy blanket. Even if it's ugly, even if you have to put it up, like when your guests come over, she was like, get yourself like not something that's just pretty, but something that is like really comforting. And every night, if you're watching TV or whatever you're doing, just wrap yourself up in that blanket. Another thing that you can do is swing or rock yourself in a chair or hammock. That's really, really soothing. It kind of brings us again back to that like nurturing mother-child kind of moment. Even if you didn't have that as a child, that's just like that motion is really, really comforting to our physiology. Also, this is one thing that I do all the time is take a hot bath. There are some things so healing about water. So healing about water. So when you are in a state of maybe more panic, get into some water, warm water, or you can hold a hot mug of tea or water and just feel the sensations of the warmth on your hands. You can also massage your own skin. So massaging your arms, massaging your legs, even your hands or your feet with some nice essential oil, with some coconut oil. Again, it's like coming back into the physical body. And then kind of the last somatic coping skill is some breathing. Breath work is so powerful. I mean, I love doing yoga. If you can do yoga, please, please, please do some restorative yoga. But even just long, deep breathing is so incredibly powerful for regulating the nervous system, for like literally just calming everything down. So I encourage you to do some breath work, long, deep breathing, even if it's just for 3 minutes. Now, the third tool is going to be aligning with the vibration of love or other elevated emotions. So if you think about in a spectrum, like the opposite of fear is love, or the opposite of fear is gratitude. And your brain, because it requires two different parts of your brain to feel these separate emotions, your brain can't simultaneously feel gratitude and fear at the same time. And so when you find yourself in that fear loop, that trance of fear, to come back to the vibration of love. I actually just did a live guided meditation yesterday that is up on the podcast and up on YouTube that you can access. And it's called How to Self-Soothe in Difficult Times. And I encourage that you go listen to that. It's about 15, 20 minutes long. And when you practice in meditation, feeling a different kind of emotion, practicing a different kind of emotion, in this case, we really access the vibration of love. And feeling that in our presence, like where is love around me? Where is the presence of love around me? And when we're caught in fear, we have a really limited focal point. It's like we can't see a lot. I mean, we're really in that kind of contracted, not only mental state, but just even in our awareness and in our vision. And so when we can shift into an elevated emotion like joy or love or gratitude, it can snap us out of that. Now, that almost seems like, how can you do that when you're in this fear? But in meditation, this is why I love meditation, you get to practice emotions when you're not feeling them, like feeling them ahead of time. Because again, there's sensations in the body. So we can access fear at any time, and we can access love at any time. We can access gratitude at any time. And the more familiar we get with practicing feeling an emotion that we might not be feeling in the real present moment, but we pretend we're feeling something different, we actually begin to feel it. And it actually shifts our brain into a different part of the brain and accesses different chemistry. So I encourage you to do one of my guided meditations to help soothe and open your heart back up, but to come back to feeling gratitude. What are you grateful for? Like when you find yourself and you go, oh my God, I'm just like watching all this stuff online, or I'm on social media, or I'm getting really angry, or I'm stuck in this grief, some of these secondary emotions. How can I pause and go, all right, number one, what can I be grateful for? Literally, my roof, my house, clean water, the clothes on my back, like all those things. And then two, where is the presence of love around me? Where do I feel it? Where do I sense it? How can I connect with it and align with it? Come back to love, come back to your heart. And that is a practice, of course, but it is a really powerful tool. Now, the fourth tool is to dialogue with fear. To dialogue with to actually write a letter and speak to your fear, to hear it, to listen to it, because fear is there and it thinks it's serving a really powerful purpose, which is to protect you, to keep you safe. And it's really important to give it a voice and to listen, like, okay, what are you afraid of? Because when we bury it or we try to deny it or ignore it, that's when it becomes a trance. That's when it can have power over us. But when we can bring it out into the light, then that's when we can have compassion for it, console it. I love Elizabeth Gilbert. She's a fantastic author, and she says, here's kind of a dialogue with fear. She says, I recognize and respect that you are part of this family, and so I will never exclude you from our activities, but still your suggestions will never be followed. You're allowed to have a seat and you're allowed to have a voice, but you are not allowed to have a vote. You're not allowed to touch the road maps. You're not allowed to suggest detours. You're not allowed to fiddle with the temperature. Dude, you're not even allowed to touch the radio. But above all else, my dear, old familiar friend, you are absolutely forbidden to drive. And I love that. It's like fear gets to hang out in the car with you along with all your other emotions. We don't have to pretend it away or say that it's not allowed to be there, but it doesn't get a vote. It doesn't get to steer. It doesn't get to touch the road maps or create detours. It's like, okay, you're here. Let me hear what you have to say. And then that's when we bring our higher mind. That's when we bring our wisdom and our compassion and our tenderness to fear to say, I hear you. I hear that you're really scared right now. I hear that you're really afraid, but I have the wheel. I'm the one steering. I'm not going anywhere. We're going to be okay. It is safe. Let's remember what's real and let's come back to reality. But having that dialogue, and I literally will journal this out and just let fear speak. Fear, what do you have to say to me? And I can honor it. I can validate it. I can say, I really get that. And fear hears the truth. Again, it's sort of like controlling the narrative. My job is to remind fear of what's real and what's true. Now, the fifth tool is to get into service. This is so powerful. Tony Robbins says, the secret to living is giving. The quickest way out of our guilt or our fear or our depression or our anxiety is to be in the service of others. So I was in all this fear right after the tornado, and I just felt debilitated and paralyzed. And it wasn't until the third day that I went out and I volunteered in an area that was decimated. I mean, is that the right word? I feel like that's the right word. Sometimes I have a little hard time with my vocabulary. But just like to the ground. I mean, you just could not believe the devastation that had happened in this part of Nashville. This is about a mile from where I live, a mile and a half from where I live. And my boyfriend and I, we went out and we volunteered. And I tell you what, it put everything in perspective. And it was like, I've been here, crying, and not to say that isn't valid. I mean, it's like everybody gets their, the right to their own processing and to their emotional response. So there's no shame for me in this. But it really did put it in perspective. I'm like, these people have lost everything, and when I was able to be in service, to donate, I created a graphic to raise money for an organization that's helping with this disaster relief. It was like when I got into service, when I showed up and volunteered, when I physically moved my body, it was like it snapped me out of that fear trance. And the quickest way to get out of that fear, no matter what kind of fear it is to go serve someone else, to listen to someone, to love on someone, to go give whatever you have to give, time, money, resources, emotional support, whatever. That will snap you out of it. So there you have it, these 5 tools to help you snap out of this trance of fear. And remember that fear and panic are contagious, but so is joy and love and gratitude and generosity and hope. We have a part in that to shift collectively, to transmute and to clear this fear, to shift the climate emotionally. We have power over fear. We are not a victim to fear. We have the ability to shift out of it. So my sweet friends, be gentle, be kind to yourself as this fear reveals itself to you. Remind yourself who is driving the bus. It's like, it may feel real, but it's not true. And also deeply take care of yourself. What do you need? What do you need to nurture, to love on, to soothe yourself in these times that are, challenging, and we can feel it? What do you need to come back to center, to ground, to anchor yourself? Get into the body, do some deep breathing, do some of the somatic work. And I just want to let you know that I'm just sending you all such deep, deep love this week. I'm excited to be with you next week with my co-host, Lindsley Brooks. We're going to get into some of this crisis emotion stuff even deeper. So share this with a friend who is maybe struggling with fear and feeling the effects of what's going on from a fearful place. And let's collectively support one another to come back to this higher vibration of love and gratitude. And one by one, as it is contagious, shift what is happening in our world. Sending so much love and light your way. Talk to y'all next week. Hey y'all, thanks so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you got some amazing nuggets to take home and start implementing into your life. And if you're looking for the show notes and links, head on over to maryhyatt.com/show. And if you loved it, why not bring your girlfriends along this journey of becoming fully alive with you? Just give a quick share of this episode to your social channels and enjoy those debriefing convos with your besties. Thanks again, and I can't wait to connect with you next week.